Hello, I'm Lork,
And I'm Carter.
and we're doing our film review on Saving Private Ryan.
So the story begins with World War II's historic D-Day invasion, then moves beyond the beach as it follows a squad of American soldiers who embark on a dangerous special mission. Captain John Miller, played by Tom Hanks, must take his men behind enemy lines to find Private James Ryan, who's played by Matt Damon, whose three brothers have been killed in combat. Faced with impossible odds, the men question their orders. Surrounded by the brutal realities of war, each man searches for his own answer, and the strength to triumph over uncertain future with honor, decency, and courage.
So basically, we're gonna start off. Did we even like the film, Carter?
I love the film.
Why do you like it?
The cinematography was great. It was so accurate on what actually happened on D-Day. I love the acting and everything about it was just such a good scene.
Yeah, I really like the film too. I just think, of course, it's directed by Steven Spielberg, and he just pays so much attention and perfects every movie that he basically creates and directs. With Tom Hanks and Matt Damon, I didn't even feel like they were Tom Hanks or Matt Damon. I got in with the movie. I felt in the moment. I thought they were actually soldiers because their acting was just so good. And in addition, I just thought the plot was really good as well. I'm still kind of iffy on if the plot was actually like real or not. If it would have been, if that would have actually happened back then. But in addition, with the
I do think it would have happened because back then you're put into a draft, and especially in World War II or something, a big war like that, you have really high chances of getting drafted, and tons of families with multiple kids in each family. I mean, doesn't seem random at all that there could be tons of kids in the same family who do end up dying or going to war together.
But I understand that point. But would the army actually have emotion about that? Would they actually care about the families?
I think so.
And would they actually
try to protect the last kid alive or the last brother, last whatever it is? I think it's very important for the government and the military to keep the last family member alive.
But do you think they would actually risk 6 or 7 men, a whole platoon, to go into the middle of a war zone and try to find one kid who might not even be alive? They didn't even know if the kid was alive when they were going through towns and...
Under certain circumstances, no. But under certain circumstances, yes. I mean, it kind of depends on what platoon they were in, if they landed on the beach together, if one was airborne or one was coming off of the boat.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I actually went online to try to see if the story was actually real, and it's actually based off of the Nyland brothers. This was a whole family of 4 boys who were all drafted in the World War II, and the United States basically mandated after a 1942 case where all the brothers were in the same platoon and were all killed.
Mm-hmm. See, that's what I think. If they're on the same platoon, I think that's when you have to take the last brother alive and try to get him out. But if they're all in completely different platoons or battalions or different regiments, then I think that's kind of hard.
However, these boys were in different regiments. So after the Sullivan case, the Nyland brothers were all switched into 4 different units. Which Edward, one of the boys, being as a pilot in the Army Air Force, Robert was in the 82nd Airborne Division. Preston was with the 4th Infantry Division, and Frederick was in the 101st Airborne. And basically on June 6, 1944, Preston, Robert, Fritz, and Thomas all took part in the first waves of the invasion. Robert was killed while manning a machine gun post. Preston was killed the next day near Omaha Beach, and Fritz had been dropped between Omaha and Utah beaches while Thomas was involved in a glider unit that landed in France. And most of the boys they thought were dead. They thought all 3, and just only one boy was left. However, after they rescued one of the boys, they actually found out that another brother was actually alive. So basically, they determined that the family wouldn't have to suffer the death of the last child. So they, with Francis, they found Francis and began the paperwork necessary for his return home. And he stayed with his men for a few more days, kind of like in the movie where Matt Damon stays with his platoon, didn't want to leave them. Mm-hmm. They stuck for a few days, and then they came back. He was shipped to England and finally back to the U.S., where he served as a military police until the completion of the war, so he didn't have to serve an active deployment anymore. Yeah. And now from the plot of the story and seeing if it's realistic or not, I mean, my mind's completely changed about it after reading this. Now I totally believe that the plot was definitely had some substance to it, and that it could have been real. Which actually was, but probably not on a dramatic level as filmmakers usually do to entice viewers to watch their films. Now we're going to switch to the initial battle, the Battle of D-Day. Carter, how do you feel about that?
I thought they did a great job, especially with all of the boat scenes, getting all of those boats off and all of the people just coming out of the boats and getting shot from machine guns or bombs or whatever like that was there. It seems very, very realistic, and it seems like that's what actually happened on D-Day.
Yeah, usually with films before this, World War II is usually seen as like romantic, and they made it seem all like gloriful and brothers. And with this film, Spielberg tried to recreate it as realistically as possible. He got firsthand like encounters from actual soldiers who went through that. He went through records. He made sure this was as realistic as possible and on as a grand level as it was in real life. Just everything about it, from just showing mutilated soldiers to men on fire to everyone dying and so another soldier throwing up everywhere. Like
People
it just showed
losing limbs,
exactly
getting blown up, completely obliterated.
It just showed how gruesome war was and what these soldiers actually had to deal with. This was praised by a lot of reviewers, actual soldiers who were there, as being the most realistic portrayal of even just a battle scene in general, in ever. And on reading an article, Spielberg meant to honor those who fought, and so he did not want to make the battle look romantic as many World War II war films before had done. He wanted to show the real suffering and intense emotion of the soldiers. And the scene was just very difficult to do. The cast had to be military trained to just realistically portray actual soldiers and what they would have done. And attention was paid to every little detail of costume, scenery, military equipment, just basically make it feel like you were actually watching the real life battle, but just in a better format with cinematography, not just raw footage, but polished. And moving on from the battle, now we're going to switch to the actors. Really the main actors being Tom Hanks and Matt Damon. Matt Damon as Private Ryan and Tom Hanks as a main character who leads the platoon to saving Matt Damon. And how do you feel about the actors? How do you feel that they portrayed their characters? Do you think they did a good job? Do you think they did a bad job?
I think they did a great job. Tom Hanks played a really good role as being the platoon leader, and Matt Damon played a really good role as being Private Ryan.
Especially with these characters, these actors, they are so well known as they're not a really under the radar actors. You know them, and with a lot of their films, you just think, oh, hey, that's Matt Damon, or hey, that's Tom Hanks. And with this, I was really just into the movie. I felt their acting was just spot on. I didn't feel like they were trying too hard. I felt like they really could have been soldiers in World War II, in the emotions that they faced during that time. So I think they did an absolutely great job. And do you feel any actors in the whole film in general could have been switched, or do you think someone else could have done a better job?
Wait, that's kind of hard to say, just because they did such a good job on making the movie with the actors they already had in there. But, I mean, maybe if you had a few actors that were actually military trained, they were actually veterans in some type of war before this, or something like that, then maybe, possibly.
Well, the thing with these actors, they actually went through a couple-month military training to see what soldiers actually would have done, how they would have held, like, how they would have portrayed themselves. But I do actually have to agree with you. I think actually having soldiers who possibly went through battle, who actually knew the emotions that these soldiers faced, I think that would have been very smart. I think some of the extras were actually military veterans. However, none of the main characters were. They were actually actors. Like they had Vin Diesel as one of the platoon. Just really famous actors. But the other good part with famous actors is that they know how to act. They know how to remember their lines. They know how to portray what the director and the script really wanted.
They know how to really show their emotions on exactly what was going on at the time.
Exactly, and they're specifically trained to be able to show all these certain emotions on cue, which I felt was good. And I felt that probably some veterans couldn't really do that.
Yeah, it would be too hard on them, or I think the actors did such a good job on just showing exactly what was happening.
Exactly. So now we're going to transition to our review of the film and what we feel about it. So Carter, you can start.
I paused it. I thought the actors were fantastic. The movie overall was just so good and entertaining. The action was nonstop. There was always something going on to keep all the audience entertained. I mean, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, for me, I just feel like the movie is really good. Having Spielberg as a director, he honestly just Spielberg perfects everything that he does. So if this film had been done by another director, I feel that it wouldn't have been as great. It wouldn't have been close to the detail that it was. In addition, the cinematography was excellent, and it actually won Best Cinematography at the 1999 Academy Awards. So that just shows how good the cinematography was. In addition,
and how good Steven Spielberg is as a director.
Exactly. In addition, I feel that the actors' portrayals were excellent. Tom Hanks and Matt Damon, you didn't even think that you weren't like, oh, hey, that's Tom Hanks, or hey, that's Matt Damon. You really believed that they were soldiers during that time.
It felt like you were there.
In addition, the plot was great as well. I was skeptical about the realism of it. However, after reading that article, this is actually what the film was based off of, so I feel that was a realistic plot and that they really paid their attention. In addition, the plot is just really interesting. It's not just like a normal war story of really nothing happens. I guess like American Graffiti where nothing happens. It just how like a night is. So it showed an actual plot and something advancing what they're trying to get in their goal. And in addition, it showed really turning on the upper orders, and they were wondering whether or not this was even worth it for their platoon to lose lives over this one kid.
Mm-hmm. And just the constant action every single day for them was like an ordinary life.
Also, just the realism of it. A lot of the film just really showed the war as like romantic and heroic, and it didn't show the gruesome aspects to it. And this film really changed a lot of viewers' thoughts on the war, how just gruesome and how hard it was for veterans who survived it.
It shows the veterans' point of view of how war actually is.
Exactly. It really showed it. This is really just a homage to the veterans who served in that war, just showing what they went through and how they risked their lives for other people and their brothers.
And to show what war actually truly is.
Yeah, exactly. Even with the mother of Private Ryan, just how she had to deal with 3 of her kids losing their lives literally on the same day. That's just it also showed the hardship for soldiers, but it also showed the hardship for their families and what their families had to deal with as well.
All their relatives, everything.
Exactly.
Friends, all of that.
It's a hardship for basically every country that was involved in the war. And now we're going to go into a review by William Thomas of Empire. Basically, his review is that uncompromising, powerful war movie that does not pull any punches, and it perfectly balances the inhumanity of war and the humanity of its protagonist, devastating and essential viewing. So how do you feel about that review?
I completely agree. I feel like that's exactly what we were saying, just very, very shorter.
Yeah, he basically just says that the film is basically a modern masterpiece, just dibbling in war and personal experiences during the war. Yeah. In addition, he quoted that Steven Spielberg's riveting infantryman's eye view of World War II will change the way war movies are perceived. Him, so brazen heroism and gung-ho guts and glory will be impossible, impertinent, even in its wake, going far beyond simplistic war's hell platitudes. Never before has the fear and flux of fighting been so vividly realized in celluloid. And I have to agree with that. Wars will never be viewed as the same, because now the viewers of that movie have seen what actually war was like, and if they see just like a simple little heroic story, they won't realize what these soldiers actually went through.
I 100% agree.
Exactly. just overall, Saving Private Ryan is just an absolute fantastic film. The cinematography is excellent, and I feel that a lot of people should watch it to realize what war is.